I'd like to welcome Patricia Viel as the next speaker. Patricia is an architect. She's the CEO of the Milan-based practice ACPV Architects, which is Antonio Cicero and Patricia Viel. And they're one of the most influential Italian architectural practices with work across the globe. She oversees many of the firm's architecture, interior, and urban design projects while actively engaging with leadership of the company and the industry at large. So Patricia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, wide context, small data, and ethical purpose. It's a lot in 15 minutes, but I will try. We have always worked by contamination, contaminating different disciplines, of course, of design, but also contaminating with art and different ways of creation, because we believe that the project needs to have an ambiguous position between knowledge and imagination, and between perception and understanding. The contamination is actually leading us to investigate different ways to know reality. And this is, of course, needs a very specific methodology. So we don't start with a vision. Quite often architectural projects are driven by images. We learn today that we are a visual being. We don't do that. We don't use reference images at the beginning. The substance of our project is really intangible and invisible. It's about intuitive correlation between facts. And it's about somehow creating a noise around the project. It was very interesting this morning to understand in which way cacophonous music can become a melody. So actually the project is based on the outcome. So again, it's not about designing a form or an object. It's about to enable the latent energy of a very complex context. Somehow architecture is for us an accident that arises in a process that again starts from studies, knowledge of a context, then become a digital object, then an architecture, then an outcome. We are very much interested in the phenomena that goes far beyond the perimeter walls of the built environment. That's why our architecture is very much dependent on the context. These are photos of our projects. In this book that has been published last year, an artist, Carlo Valsecchi, pictured our project in fantastic images in which you barely can distinguish where is the building that we designed. Of course, the context is not only a physical space. It's for us, first of all, social expectation, the economical pressure, the dream from a client, coming from a client, and obviously resources that we have given. That's probably why we are not good at icons. We cannot really express all that in a prompt for stable diffusion. We do not use AI-supported softwares. But what we really look at is to express our architecture through very strong emotional and symbolic contents. So this is a data analytics software, the one that you see here on the left, which is used in the context of data science. And we use it to collect, to harvest data from our own models. From our models, we develop small data sets. They are derived, of course, again, from very large contexts, because they are coming from surveys, from interviews, from literature, from art, from the sense of a scene, whatever. But then we somehow compress all those data in a very much regulated and codified computational model. We would define this as symbolic AI. Symbolic AI is something maybe that is misleading because it's really related to the old-fashioned AI with words, understandable words for human being to understand the process. But somehow this is what we do. Actually, we really give to all those data a framework, a rule to process them in a way that stays understandable. I would call this kind of framework paradata, so information about in which way you go from one decision to another. And this is where the ethical context is built. So everybody knows that can be very, very big hallucinations from data. Everybody knows that there is no big data in our industry. Actually, this is, in my view, a very big opportunity. We don't need big data. We are not companies that are gathering their information from customers. We study the context. We gather information quite often from public data. And in our country, they are very poorly curated. So what we need is actually to focus on the quality of the source. And we built the source ourselves. So that's why we decided, approaching the AI technology, to shift from big data to a data-centric AI. Clean knowledge is a database at the end, where you need to create your processes of research. And of course, the fact is that in our world, you need to be proprietary, they need to be original, they need to be your database. And this is what we are doing. We only produce models. Some of you remember the era of drawings. So we went from, let's say, a way to tell about projects with a narrative, very figurative narrative, to build digital objects with behaviors. It's very important for us to end with an internal standard for modeling element. This is something that we needed to build, as everybody probably here. So we created an internal standard in order to build complex models, to build libraries of finite elements, to collect metadata for them, because actually this is creating for us what is today the base of the changes that we are and the evolution that we are undergoing. The fact that the database is ours and is absolutely known, verified, controlled, and built from our experience is actually giving to us the capability, introducing AI to the process, to automate and speed the collection of information, and somehow to create the possibility to have very large analysis of the context, and of course, going through let's say, very repetitive, routinarian kind of activity that is needed for optioneering. But this is all happening before a freehand sketch, which is, of course, happening at a certain time, because you can study and build your model for context, but there is a moment when you walk a site. And this is still very human. You have to have your impression. You experience something that is your environment. Again, the duality that we have been talking about this morning is very true for designers. There is a kind of distance in between yourself and the context that you are exploring when you are starting on a project. But this mental synthesis that generates the project remain a product of an alchemy of, let's say, sentiments, knowledge, of course, kind of feelings, self-arrogance, of course, somehow self-consciousness of the capability to create something, which is the result of the self-awareness that no computing machine could ever have. They can, of course, play chess, but this is something that they can not do, and it will never be capable to do. So only after that, the decision is made. You have your intuition, you have your knowledge, you have been through very large kind of journeys on the context, on the memories of the client, on the desires of the client, on the idea that you can try to build together. But then you go through the modeling process, which is extremely relevant because we are building digital objects that behaves like reality. This is exactly the meaning of our work. The point is that we need to build a real relationship, a direct relationship between a digital object that doesn't exist, but is capable to behave like a real thing in an actual context that you know very well. This is the good way, in our view, to approach the issue of designing. Being real and coherent, but aligned with a purpose. And this is for us to be right. This is actually where the ethical parameter that I was talking about at the very beginning is somehow defined for every project. In order to do so, you need to align with your machines. I mean, you need your machines to align with yourself, which is actually what is happening. The interaction, the research that you go through in your different processes of design using AI is actually teaching your machine and telling your machine what you want to find at the end. Is where actually we introduce what we call a deterministic and predefined algorithm, if you like, or model, in order to be extremely discretionary in what you are doing. So there is no hazard to be confused by the machine. This is exactly the result that can happen in different contexts. You know very well what happened to Gemini. Was accused to erase white people in the representations, in the creation of images. But this is actually why probably the use of AI creates some kind of discomfort. There is no traceability in a lot of processes that are driven by AI. And this is somehow can evoke the kind of, let's say, disease that you can have when there is a lack of an ideal, a clear ideal framework, which is what exactly is happening in this moment in our life. We experience a kind of ideological vagueness in this historical moment, right? So there is no, I mean, the ideal frameworks are somehow weakened by biases. So it's very difficult to have the deep understanding, the deep consciousness of what is right and what is true. And this is also giving us a sense of the loss of control in our evolution, again, which is, of course, the loss of control coupled with somehow the feeling of being manipulated. So there is a current need, a very urgent need in this moment, we feel it, to interface with machine using natural language, but a natural language built for an artificial understanding. This is very critical because, of course, we need to create a kind of unique and simplified language for the definition of very complex phenomena. Of course, a language model is a world model. So your language model is really giving the sense of your relationship with reality. It's a world model. More or less, I don't know if you remember the book from Orwell, 1984, in which the author was imagining a kind of newspeak, the simplified English with no ambiguity at all, no personal content, that was supposed to educate minds to live peacefully in an authoritarian regime. We are Italian. We know that there is research in order to educate machines and to create machine languages in Chinese or in Arabic. But just to let you know our problem. We use in our current language more or less 300,000 words because the lemmas that we use are different from the Celtic languages. It's very, very difficult for Italian or Latin languages to simplify. They are, for their nature, extremely complex. But we will do it. We are doing it, actually. Because this is what is needed in order to, and we'll do it in English, of course. Somehow, we will need to build up a language that is transferring our way to see the world and our ideas to a very artificial and simplified system of understanding. More or less as the, let's say, the hieroglyphics did. In the Ptolemaic period, they transferred to us with a quite simple language, a very complex social structure. So we will do it. We will build our own language, more or less as we did for our modeling standards. That will be a vocabulary and a grammar in English, of course. And this exercise will force us to express a kind of indigenous culture of our office. This culture will link a semantic code to our data, a meaning, to our analytical process, and of course to the design synthesis and to the outcome. This kind of process is actually very common. This is happening with your smartphone. This is happening with self-driving cars, with dishwashers. So our dialect, because that will be probably best described as a dialect, will run with a few data points, as I said before, small data sets. But they will be ours and genuine. They will be verified coming from context that we built or we know. But more important, they will be composed within an ethical objective for each project. I'm not talking about the ethics at large. Every single project will need an ethical objective. So everybody knows that BIM has complicated and burdened design processes. Digital pre-construction of an object is actually creating, big and complicated models with a lot of data. So we will use AI for automation and to support the generative development of options, of course, as everybody does. And we will use it for the correlation of data and again to support the construction and the growth of our unique and homogeneous language. It will probably make modeling partially automatic, but the automation will feed in internal knowledge that will not come from outside, from other worlds. It will be capable to implement solutions that we already know, and of course, provide us with evolutionary variations. So again, the next real need for quality in design will be actually a rigorous discipline of maintenance, updating, and data verification, because everything you know in 3 months is gone. You need to update and to maintain your data constantly. We are a small firm compared to Rumble. We have 11 partners, 200 professionals, but I would say that good 15% of them are dedicated to digital process development. So we are obsessed by this issue. This is not because we want to be efficient. We will never lower the quality of our work. But because of the quality that we are sustaining, the fact that we are spending at least 10,000 hours for a model, for a single model, and we produce more or less 7 terabytes per year of data, we need AI to be capable to plan for more commissions. That's the only real purpose. We don't have access to the amount of data nor the computing capacity of organizations of other sizes. And actually, we are not very interested in developing knowledge that is external. We approach the problem in the old-fashioned way, so by trials and error. But what AI can do is actually to make us capable to trace our paths, and of course to choose among a lot of errors the one that is more promising to become a solution. This will probably make the projects reproducible. Or maybe the link between the authorial link could be blurred. I don't think that this will be an issue anymore. Our discipline is in debt to collective effort and shared knowledges, and that will be more and more. But what I believe is that the ethical and cultural principle that informs a project will open a break between the process and method of design against built architecture. This is a little bit provocative, but I think that this will be one of the major outcome of using AI in the design process. Why this? Because the different methods between conception and construction and the different goals, of course, that we will have between production and conception of architecture. The gap between conceptualization the gap between conceptualization for digital modeling and technical modeling for production will be, nevertheless, a big lever for the development of a pure research in architecture. We have been listening to academics here this morning. They are pure researchers, and of course you can feel it, because they are obsessed by the future, the problematic kind of context that is for them the present. This needs to happen for architecture as well, and for the built environment even more, because in this moment research is completely subject to variables of technical and accidental nature. We need to be freed of that. Research is needed in architecture and in the built environment in general, pure research, because buildings and cities will be conceived and designed according to a purpose, of course. But they will be linked to an actual, real, present scenario. But actually, what we know today, what we learned, is that they have to be built in such a way as to be activated for different purposes in the future. Their evolution will be possible because all the objects, without exception of our next or present reality, will be activated and defined in their functions by softwares, adapting to scenarios that we cannot imagine now. So the structure, the construction, will be a sort of hardware that will have the opportunity to exist only if it is typologically generic. Let me just explain a little bit more on that. Typology is about culture, how you use things, how your social behaviors will expand in an architectural space. This needs to be generic. We do not know what kind of society, what kind of way of life will happen in the future. So the built environment needs to be generic, meaning that we will need to lose quality parameters like efficiency, for instance, for to ceiling heights. It needs to accommodate different functionalities. So the result will be a different relationship with this technology. Design and construction will use AI in a completely different way. Predictive on one hand, of course, and adaptive on the other hand, with obviously diametrically opposite implication. But what remains, in our view, the real focus of the work is that the determination of any calculation path or decision-making processes is and will be as relevant or even more relevant and decisive as the outcome. Thank you.